I just remember calling my dad and I just said to him, I feel like I'm losing my mind.
The world is obsessed with fast-track success. It's easy to think that people become successful overnight. But let's face it, more often than not, what we see on social media is total BS. I'm here to look past the perception of perfect success and focus on life's detours, perceived mistakes, and even wrong choices, and understand the real road traveled up the career ladder. After all, we're all effing up. Rebekah Bastian is a product leader, entrepreneur, writer, and artist. She's currently SVP of product at Glowforge, helping people make amazing creations with 3D laser printers. Prior to that, she founded social timeline platform OwnTrail, which was acquired by Teal. She spent 15 years at Zillow with roles including VP of Product and VP of Community and Culture. Rebekah wrote the award-winning book Blaze Your Own Trail and is a Forbes contributor. Rebekah serves on the board of Bellwether Housing. She founded the Authentic and the Time is Dow communities, and she's an investor and advisor to various technology startups. Rebekah has been recognized in the Puget Sound Business Journal 40 Under 40, the Inman 33 People Changing the Real Estate Industry, and the Female Founders Alliance Champion Awards. Rebekah earned her Master's of Mechanical Engineering from UC Berkeley and Bachelor's of Mechanical Engineering from the University of Washington. Rebekah, hello. Thank you so much for being here and being willing to share your story.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get started into the questions, why don't you tell me a little bit about Glowforge and how things are going over there?
Things are going great. I joined as SVP of product and it's really fun. It's a completely new space for me. And so Glowforge makes these really cool 3D laser printers that can cut and engrave all sorts of different materials. And so you can actually see a couple of them behind me right there, the Pro and the Aura. I'm an artist and crafter my whole life, really. My mom's an artist. And so
very cool.
I have been geeking out, just playing with it in addition to like doing my job and stuff. But
yeah, it sounds like you've landed in a space that you identify with. That's awesome.
yeah, it was very serendipitous. And yeah, I'm having a lot of fun.
Let's go back in time a bit and let's talk about when you were a older teenager rising into adulthood and you were thinking about your future. Did you have
back a bit time here?
Just a couple of years. Did you have ideas for your future? Was college, university something you were thinking about? Frame that time for me.
You could have asked me further back in time and I might have had some better answers. I was a little bit of a train wreck of a teenager, honestly. So I wasn't really goal-oriented, we'll say. I graduated from high school by the skin of my teeth. And then I did go to college actually right away afterwards for a little bit and filled out.
Hold on, back it up. So you're like breezing right through that. You failed out of college.
I did. I went to
tell me about that.
I went to a little liberal arts school in Colorado and I quickly made friends with everybody that lived in the town that was not there for the college. People that were there to snowboard and party and stuff and just got distracted by that and didn't do the school part as much. And yeah, that was not ideal.
How did you get back on the rails from that experience? What came next after that?
So I moved back home for the summer. I grew up in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So I went back to my parents. I started having some pretty bad panic attacks, just transparently, because why not? We're talking about effing up.
Yeah.
Doing a lot of different substances at that time. I think that had some chemical reactions, started having some panic attacks. That kind of cleaned me up. Once your brain isn't working the way you would expect it to, you don't want to be adding other things into it as well. So I cleaned up my system. It took a while to get past that. But then I started dating the guy that I had gone to high school with, and then he'd been living in Seattle and was going back there. So I basically had nothing to do with my life. And I'm like, I'll move to Seattle with you. So I moved to Seattle. I'm still in Seattle. And then I got here, still going through some panic attacks and stuff, but started to get past that. And I was just working. And after just doing a bunch of shitty jobs for a while, I enrolled in the community college here. And I think I was so paranoid that I was going to fail out again, which logically, the reason I failed out wasn't because I couldn't do the work.
Of course.
Work.
Right. But
So
you get in your own head.
yeah, I was so paranoid. So I became like the exemplary community college student. Of course, I was so brain and screwed up that anyway, I did great at community college, and I ended up taking a series of classes that led me further and further into kind of like math and physics stuff because I was just following what felt interesting, and that ended up being really interesting to me. The community college program here in Seattle has an agreement with University of Washington, which is the big state school here, where like they have a transfer agreement thing for students that are doing well. So I ended up coming up with this idea over tequila shots one night with some friends that I'm like, what should I be when I grow up? And I really like all this math and physics stuff. I want to be an inventor. And one friend said, but I think mechanical engineering is a good pathway to being an inventor. So I said, okay, cheers, mechanical engineering it is. And so that's
amazing.
to get into the mechanical engineering department at UW. And I got in. So I ended up doing that for undergrad. And then I ended up continuing on and going to Berkeley for grad school in mechanical engineering as well.
If we could go back to when you moved back home and you working on yourself and trying to rid everything in your system and all that, what emotions and feelings were you having reflecting on what you had just left behind, failing out of school and now trying to get yourself in a better place? How is that manifesting mentally and emotionally for you?
It's hard to answer that. And it's not like I was like in some stable place where I was able to reflect on what was happening. I mean, I would say that I did more reflecting and like having feelings about that later, a little bit later once I got my head straight a little bit more. And then I felt just pretty ashamed.
The last question I have about that is, did you come to this realization on your own about cleaning yourself up? Or was it the influence of like family, friends, or in conjunction with yourself as well? I suppose could be the question.
It was the anxiety and panic attacks. Like it was like, that was really scary. And it hit all of a sudden. It was like the kind of panic attacks I was having where it's called like dissociation, where you feel like you're not in yourself. And it hit all of a sudden. Like I was at my boyfriend's house hanging out, and then all of a sudden it just swept over me. And that's the first time I ever experienced it. And it felt like a bad acid trip or something. It was, and I just remember calling my dad, and I just said to him, I feel like I'm losing my mind. And he just said, I'll be right there. I have amazing parents. And so he just came, and I remember he was just like, we went home, we're just like walking in circles around the yard.
You ended up transferring to UW, mechanical engineering. You cheered with friends. What I'm going to do, let's go to the completion of the program. So you went straight to Berkeley.
Yes, but there's actually, while we're talking about like the difficult moments, so I'll share this one, which is that, so I didn't know what to do. I went into the program wanting to be an inventor, which when you ask me what I wanted to do as a teenager, and I'm like, I have no idea. I don't want to do anything. But I will say that there's been a kind of inventor type route to me since my childhood. I think my childhood aspirations were more indicative of where I wanted to go than my teenage aspirations. But being an inventor has always been in me. And so that's, I'm going to get a mechanical engineering degree. I'm going to be an inventor of some sort. I don't really know what that means. That's what will happen. So I was like, grad school could be interesting, but there's only two programs that I was aware of that sounded like they'd be really cool, like inventor type grad school programs. Berkeley and one was Stanford. So I'm like, I'll just apply to those two. And if I get into one of them, cool. If not, I'll just go, find a cool job. So I got rejected from Stanford. Meanwhile, and I hadn't heard from Berkeley yet. And then I talked to this professor, this old dude who's there to do research and not that into teaching. And I had been doing some research work for him. And I had said something about, oh yeah, I want to be an inventor. And he laughed at me, and he stopped and goes, went into the wrong degree for that. And I was devastated. And so then there's basically a 2-week period where he had crushed my dreams. I hadn't heard back from Berkeley yet. And I'm like, wait, what have I done?
That's brutal.
And I'm starting to have this realization of, everyone seems to be going into either or like Boeing, which is like the big airplane manufacturer here. And I'm like, oh, that. And someone came to campus around that time too and was giving a talk about they were a toilet paper engineer and how exciting that was. And I'm like, oh shit, what have I done? None of it sounds exciting to me. Toilet paper engineer. I mean, I was really discouraged then and just wallowed in that for a while. So this woman, Alice Adachita, who was the head of the mechanical engineering department or the chair of the mechanical engineering department at Berkeley, she'd been on sabbatical. And so she called me and she was like, oh, I'm sorry, I've been on sabbatical, but I just saw your application. Are you still interested in coming here? I'm like, yes. And she was amazing. So I ended up going and working in her lab and going to school there. And she was incredible. And the whole program there was really fun. So yeah, that was like,
That's rough.
but yeah, it was a moment of worry there for sure.
So you're coming upon completion down in Berkeley, and it looks like you ended up at Microsoft. How was finding a role there? Was that easy, hard?
I think the notable thing about me going to Microsoft from there is that I was totally not doing the kind of engineering. It was a little bit of a twist in the path right there. But yeah, I was dating a different guy than I moved to Seattle. But the man that's now my husband, Shane, he and I had started dating when I was in undergrad, and he's older than me, so he was not in undergrad. But so we did like long distance relationship while I was down there. So I really wanted to get back to Seattle to be with him.
Of course. Yeah.
So that was my kind of job search motivation because I find it and I'm like, oh, I saw that Microsoft was interviewing on campus. I'm like, they're in Seattle. Signed up for an interview, like wrote in the margin hardware because they had some different categories of interviews. So I go to the interview and the guy's like, I don't know how to do a hardware interview. That's not what we're down here recruiting for. So he ended up giving me a program manager interview, which program manager at Microsoft is the same as product manager in most places. And then did that and then got flown up to Seattle for more program manager interviews and ended up getting this job that I'd never heard of before. And that was not what I had gone to school for. But a product manager, a program manager is very much like, it's this new product development life cycle where you like think through strategy, come up with ideas about what you're going to build, think about how to implement it, test it. Like that whole cycle is what I had been learning in grad school for hardware, for mechanical engineering applications, and is what I ended up doing with software. So even though I had no actual software experience, the work itself wasn't completely foreign. But yeah, it was and also I didn't have any other job offers.
What challenges did you find in your time there?
Obviously learning what a program manager is and how to do that job but also it was just really boring. And I was, so this is what a real job is. It's boring, like, but it pays pretty well, you know, because I didn't have any other context. I did every other kind of job in the world that from like everything service industry and retail and just all every shit job you could imagine. That's okay. I was working on Outlook, the email client, and very legacy products. And I was very junior. So that's what a junior person can do with a legacy product is very tiny thing. There's nothing visionary about it. But actually, I just assumed that's how it was. The thing that made me finally want to leave was the commute. It was awful. I live in a neighborhood of Seattle called Ballard, which is far as you can get from Redmond, which is where Microsoft is.
Yeah, that's a whole.
Yeah, I just couldn't do that anymore.
That was rough day commute.
It was awful.
How'd you end up at Zillow?
I was actually the first employee that answered a Craigslist ad. So it was still like super stealth pre-launch startup. Zillow I didn't really know what we were doing because they were so stealth, but I knew the founders and had a really good track record because they'd founded Expedia. Everyone I met there through the interview process seemed really awesome. And it just seemed exciting. So I was like, worst case scenario, we'll get another job, but let's try this early startup and see what happens.
Were there thoughts about, oh, this could be my chance to go that mechanical engineering route and not the software route? Or were you bought into software? Or you were agnostic at that point?
I guess I looked on Craigslist at who was hiring and the jobs that seemed like I could qualify for them built up and be software jobs because I started to know what that meant more. I love product management. I love that's basically taken me through everywhere I've gone now in my career for the past 2 decades. It is like an active invention. I can't help but see, because you're so social, it just ties in really well because you're like connecting dots all over the place, right? Not just in the work, but in the people, and you're drawing it all together. It seems like it would suit you quite well. It's very community focused job, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you were at Zillow for
over 14 and a half years. That is no short tenure. It looks like you went through at least 4 different roles or promotions, however you'd classify them during that time. Did you feel like your career was on a rocket ship?
No, but in hindsight, it does look like it was. No, I actually felt impatient a lot of the time because I'm always wanting to like do new things, try new challenges. I wanted to keep moving up in like levels and titles too. No, if you ask anybody that I reported to at different phases there, like I probably was always like chomping at the bit for the next thing.
Do you feel like that got in your way a bit of your work?
No, but I guess like I say that because like if you look at my trajectory there, it's very rocket ship looking. And what is all of the times I was told yes to something I wanted to do. Right. And so my point is more like there's a lot of no's behind those yeses.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's important to name because it can feel like when you look at someone who is making progressions in their life or their career, oh, they have experienced a series of yeses. And yeah, but there's a lot of rejections for every acceptance. There's a lot of
Yes.
those yes. Like I just like to name that to not make it seem like it was some smooth, like upward trajectory.
So let's talk about the no's.
Yeah.
What stands out in your mind in terms of the couple of no's that were points of frustration or struggles for you along those 14 and a half years?
There's times where people were brought in above me where I felt like I should have been that person or that kind of thing, or just trying to get different initiatives going that don't take off. Or there's so much in there. I wouldn't even say it was anything that unique to me or my experience. It's just anyone you talk to who has had a series of yeses, like I guarantee they've had more no's behind them. Like that's just I feel like that's just the math. It's the numbers game thing.
I'm thinking back to my own experience, and I'd run an HR function for a company for a very long time. I was doing top to bottom, absolutely everything, but my title was still director at the time. And very badly wanted to be VP, and I wanted to sit on the executive team, and I kept being told no. And when it came to what do I need to do to get there, I wasn't getting much substance in terms of what I could do to get there. And it really frustrated me. And I was insistent that it was the right time whenever. Then I get there eventually. I get that title, I get on that executive team, and I start doing the different work that comes along with all that, which it's like I had no clue about. And I look back and I go, oh, yeah, no, I actually wasn't ready. They actually knew what they were talking about. I think the most frustrating thing for me was the lack of articulation and communication around the why. I think it can be so hard for the leaders above you to communicate the why to you. Was that part of your experience as
Yeah.
well?
Yep. I've been on both sides of that experience. I've been really frustrated. I am not hearing actionable feedback. And I've been stuck trying to figure out what the most actionable feedback I can give in a squishy, nebulous situation,
Yeah.
right? Because it's obviously it's a combination of especially like the higher up you get, the more it is it's hard to be like, oh, you just need to hit these numbers or this goal or do this thing, right? Because it becomes a more nuanced thing. But that's also where the misbias can be introduced, right? Because when it becomes a kind of like how you're carrying yourself or how you're like your relationship with other people or how you're dealing with nuanced situations, like that's where it's not a coincidence that there's fewer and fewer women and employees of color that keep moving up at each stage in the leadership process, because there's the less that it's like completely like measurable kind of decision, the more there is potential for introduction of bias. And so I get feedback that was infuriating, which, by me saying infuriating, I'm probably reinforcing the feedback because people trying to give you like, this is what you need to get to the next level. It ends up being like personality based feedback that women get way more than men, like statistically way more.
Yeah.
Like I think 77% more in a study that I quoted once. So that's something that I try really hard to be cognizant of in my leadership roles now is you can't make decisions based on kind of personality traits for women and not for men. Like that's just, or there's so many other kind of like biases that you can extrapolate from that statement, which it's hard because but I can also look back, like you said, and say, oh, I wasn't ready in some ways, but it becomes frustrating for everybody to try to articulate that. And it's where like within corporate frameworks, there's definitely need for more structure, even though it can be hard to define that.
When you became a people manager for the first time, what was that experience like?
That experience is actually pretty wild because I had been wanting to. I applied to a few different management roles over the years and kept not getting them. And then I get called to talk with our CTO when I'm 8 months pregnant. And he says, we're spinning up this new team and we'd like you to lead it. I'm like, what? That experience blew so many of my limiting beliefs wide open because like I had thought, and part of the reason that I was so anxious to move into these roles beforehand is I just had this misconception in my head that I had to get to wherever I wanted to be in my career before I started having kids, because once I did, I would plateau.
That was it.
And
Yeah.
I think that's where some of my urgency even came from. And so the fact that then suddenly I realized I'm working for a company where that actually wasn't a limiting factor after all. I just didn't realize it. And that was my first kid. I actually got promoted into my first VP role not long after my second maternity leave. So it was so cool for me to discover that I wasn't like marching towards some plateau. And honestly, like all the coolest parts of my career. And I think like my best leadership skills have come after having kids.
Yeah, I would agree with that for myself as well. That resonates completely. Why do you think we get that in our heads that we have to achieve X before we have children? I mean,
To be fair, I was very fortunate to be working for a company where that wasn't true. And it is.
Yeah.
I talked to so many women who have hit that glass ceiling completely in relation to having children. But both from the standpoint of employers that stigmatize against mothers is a real thing. The motherhood penalty is real. There's data there. And it's really like the world asks a lot of us. So there's the internal and the external factors there, or external and other external maybe. So there's like the way employers keep you down once you have kids. And so I was so lucky to have ended up in a place where that wasn't the case. And then there's like all of the double standards and expectations of what it means to be a working mother, and like the balance or and lack thereof with that. So there's very real reasons for it. And it's different for everybody, right? I really thrived in working motherhood, and it's been really hard sometimes.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of privileged circumstances in my favor in terms of where I've worked, my partner, the resources that we've had in terms of like childcare and stuff, like all of those things have helped it as well.
When you say that it's been hard at times, what are you referring to, if you don't mind sharing?
I'll give a couple examples. So I started OwnTrail, and we'll get more into that whole story. So I started my own startup while I was still working at Zillow, and did it in all the right legal ways, making sure that I discovered everything. Then I even put in my notice at Zillow to go, because I realized I really wanted to go build a startup. And Zillow was amazing about it. And I ended up doing it basically like a 4.5 month ramp off period to make sure everything went really smoothly. So there was a point where I'd already given my notice, but I was still working at Zillow. Then OwnTrail launched. And so once the company launches, then you're really full-time in it. So I was basically doing a full-time job at Zillow, a full-time job at OwnTrail. And then the pandemic hit, and suddenly my kids were home from school. So there was a 3-month period there. I was homeschooling and doing 2 full-time executive jobs. And I just don't that's all I can say about it. I don't remember it was just the most intense survival mode. Plus the panic of impending doom.
We thought we were all dying tomorrow.
I guess the other one I'll mention though too, going back further, is, and this is under normal circumstances, it's hard to be a working parent, but my first child was born with this rare skull condition that he ended up having surgery for. He's totally fine now. And he was diagnosed at 3 months, and he had surgery at 9 months. And it was this really intense surgery. They had to take his forehead out and remold it.
Oh, wow.
It was awful. So it was terrible. So the time from when he was diagnosed until the surgery, and I'm working, Oh, and my husband had just been laid off then too, right around the time he was diagnosed and right around the time I was going back to work after maternity leave. So that whole period of I was feeling so much sadness and anxiety about this condition and the surgery coming up. And then when the surgery happened, and then he had this series of like weird mystery infections for a while afterwards. And so like that whole period was like, it wasn't just being a working parent and a new working parent, but it was like with all that medical stuff hanging overhead too, was like, it's the part about showing up to work and trying to be present and do what you need to do while there's so much hanging over you in your personal life.
Ugh, that's
It was
heavy.
time. Yeah.
I'm so glad he's okay.
I know. Totally. I would never wish that experience on anybody.
What took you from VP of product to VP of community and culture? This is intriguing.
I felt like I had a little bit more mental space. And I just kept, because I'm the kind of person that can't just sit in mental space ever. I need to fill it. So I just kept doing more and more side projects that I was passionate about. And they really revolved around like how we can be leveraging our products to solve social issues. Once everybody finally told me yes to doing this, I completely freaked out. It was like an identity crisis moment where it was funny because I was actually at this like product conference giving a talk, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's so cool. You're VP of product at Zillow and all this stuff." And I like was literally like in the airport heading back. It was like a Friday afternoon. And I just emailed everybody that had told me yes to this. I'm like, I think I've made a mistake. I'm a product person. I don't know what. They were so nice about it.
How did you get your mental state back in the game?
Transitions are just so hard. I think what I realized at that moment was how much I had internalized the labels that I thought I had been this. And I'd actually like written articles on this and stuff. I'm not a woman in tech. I'm just a person in tech. Stop labeling me. I felt like I had a strong opinion on throwing away labels, but then it turned out as soon as I was like ready to make that change, I'm like, wait, I'm a woman in tech. I'm a woman in product. What am I doing? And yeah, it just felt really scary. The only way that I got through it was going through it. I'm like, you know what? I talked everyone into this. I'm just going to do it and see how it goes. And what I realized pretty quickly then, once I did make that transition, was like, oh, it's still totally me. Like, I'm not a different person. I still have all the same skills and experiences. And it really helped me embrace the idea of our experiences being additive. I wasn't starting over in this new field. I was adding to everything I'd already done. And I just had to like experientially realize that. And then I was okay. I just had to like take the leap. And then I like realized like, it's still me. I still have the same network, the same skills. I'm actually using all the skills I've used in product to address these actually much more difficult problems that directly involve humans and all this stuff. And I ended up having an amazing experience doing it. It was really great. And I think like what I learned and experienced leading community and culture was like so much what informed what I ended up building with OwnTrail. But it was just like quick little identity crisis moment there.
Yeah, a little imposter syndrome. Yeah. Why not? You already mentioned that you were baking OwnTrail there at the end of your time at Zillow, of course, all in the appropriate ways. And you expressed the stress of juggling both during the hot time of COVID. What was it that drew you to want to create something on your own? Is this like the inventor in you? How did you come to make the decision to do something out on your own?
Yeah, I felt for a long time like I could see myself founding a company someday. At that point, I'd started being an advisor to some different startups. And so getting more insight into what this startup thing really is about. I had lots of ideas, but I'd always been able to shoot them down in the past. It was actually the thing that got me to do it, not the just concept of being a founder. And the thing was that I had written a book called Blaze Your Own Trail. And the book was really fun. It is this choose your own adventure exploration of life paths. Those choose your own adventure books.
Yeah.
Which I totally read as a kid. So that format where you make a decision at the end of each chapter and that tells you where to go next.
Love
and
it.
it's like basically following the path of this young woman who's but which is you. It's in the second person. So you are the one going through all this. And like starting from like graduating college, but then all the different decisions and experiences and ups and downs and everything she takes. And there's 19 different endings and a lot of shit happens in there. And it's really trying to embrace the idea that there is no one right. And which is something that I found myself increasingly saying to everybody that would listen, because you move into leadership roles and you start having more and more people reaching out and asking for coffee and advice and stuff like that. And which I always say yes to. And I was just feeling this very clear theme where everyone I talked to felt like they were supposed to know exactly where they were going and how they were going to get there. And they were scared of getting it wrong. And I just wanted to be like, you can't get it wrong. There's no right. There's no one right path. There's no one right way to get here. And especially for I come up to product management and people would always be like, how do I become a product manager? That's one profession where there's no way to get that. Like everyone who's great at product management has come through a very different to get there.
Yes.
As I was saying that kind of mantra over and over, there's no one right path, that I ended up actually just waking up in the middle of the night one night with this idea for a Choose Your Own Adventure book that showed it to you more experientially. And so I ended up writing that, super fun. Ended up finding an amazing publisher that I worked with. And once I'd signed with them, there's like a year period from when you sign with the publisher till the book actually comes out. I started thinking about and playing around with this idea of, oh, what if I had like for my book launch website, what if it was an interactive website and people could share their paths and stuff? And then that ended up just completely taking on a life of its own. And I just had all these big ideas. And suddenly I realized, wait, there's like a business here. Everybody feels alone in their journey because you look around and LinkedIn, social media, you see all these really like picture perfect end results. You see the highlight reels, you see all the yeses, but not the nos. And so I was like, wow, what if there was a platform where people could share what their real stories look like and see each other's and suddenly blow open the idea of that right path. And so that's the idea for OwnTrail. And as I started working on it and bringing together some advisors and team members and staff, I'm like, there's something here and I think I have to do it. Like so
It's amazing.
All of that to say that short answer, I felt like I couldn't not do it. And that's what made the decision for me. Yeah.
What do you wish that you had been more prepared for or known as you were jumping into being a founder CEO?
Yeah, everything. First of all, I had this really awesome idea for this really cool consumer product on Trail where people can share their journeys, see others, support each other along the way. Like, how cool is that? I'm just going to go out and build that. And then I'll figure out how to monetize it down the road because there's a lot of ways you can monetize that. And the reason I felt that way was because I was at Zillow in the early days. And that's what we did there. We built this amazing consumer product and then years later figured out how to monetize it. And we'll shovel money at the company along the way. It turns out that is a privilege that not everyone is afforded, to just have everyone shoveling money at you while you build a cool consumer product. If I started a company again, I would have a business model from day one, day zero, and be making money from day one and have the potential to be self-sustaining and then be able to take investment for growth.
I learned about you obviously through the press of the end of the journey, if you will, of OwnTrail, and reading the article, which was quite fascinating. My husband passed it on to me and was like, wow, it sounds the message of this company is very much the message of the podcast, and like how cool if you would be able to connect with her. Obviously, I was bought in right away. Talk to me about the end of your time at OwnTrail.
Yeah. So fast forward. So we built this thing and worked on it, had an amazing team, put several years of great work into it, really grew OwnTrail from a place to just share and see life journeys to a place where people were actively working through those life journeys. And it evolved into a space where people could share where they've been, where they are right now and what they're working towards, and then be able to call in help from the community on those things that they're working through or towards. And so a really vibrant and helpful and authentic community that really formed around that. We experimented with different business models and had a freemium model where anybody could create a trail for free. And then in order to tap into the full utility around being able to make progress along that trail, that was like $10 a month. So subscription based, and some really strong early signals about that business model, but we hadn't scaled it yet and we hadn't figured out growth yet. And honestly, we just hadn't really found that product market fit yet. we had in some ways, like the thing we were trying to do was working really well for a small number of people, like a few thousand people a month, but we hadn't found the mechanisms yet to scale that. And we'd raised about 1.5 million in pre-seed funding at that point. And so then flash forward, and it's early this year, early 2023, we ended up going through Techstars Anywhere, which is a cool program. And then we were getting close to running out of money. And honestly, I'd been trying to raise at the end of last year, but that wasn't happening. So anyone that's been following like the venture capital market in the past year or so, I don't need to tell you, it's a shitty market.
It's shitstorm.
Yeah. And so basically I'd been trying to raise at the end of last year, and we had runway until this summer, and it wasn't happening. But then we got accepted to Techstars, and I'm like, okay, great, we'll do that. That's going to set us up really well to raise. It's going to be a much tighter time frame once we get out of there, but what we get out of the program should hopefully set us up on the right track. We completed Techstars. I was more prepared than ever. The company was doing better than it had ever been before, and I set out to raise, and it just was not happening. Like there was just no money to be had. Like the only money being deployed seemed to be going into AI stuff, and we're approaching our cash out date. And I just started to have to get real about this might not move forward, like, which was just such a gut wrenching conclusion to come to, right? Because obviously this company is my baby. And it's my brainchild. It came from this book I wrote. It's everything I believe in. This company is the manifestation of my entire belief in value systems. And people love it. Not enough people yet, but people love it. It's impacted people's lives. And there might not be a way forward for me to keep voting. And so I pulled together my advisors and just had some really hard conversations about, and I'll keep trying to raise, but like it just doesn't seem to be happening. And I was getting meetings. People seem to like me and want to meet with me, and we're like, oh, I like what you're doing. And the answers just kept being like, you're great. This is great. Really interesting. Just want to see a little more traction. That was always it. And people just weren't making the commitment. They just wanted to see us get to that next level of,
I can't make more traction without more money.
Absolutely. I tried looking under every rock, really, but then ultimately I'm like, I think I need to pursue plan B in parallel. And plan B, I spent a lot of time kind of reflecting on and thinking about my priorities. And without a doubt, the number one priority was that OwnTrail keeps existing. Because I'm like, there are people that love this. They can make it this is what the world needs. I still inherently believe that OwnTrail is what the world needs.
Yeah.
In terms of how people are owning their own stories, how people are understanding each other and each other's experiences, how people are helping each other, and the ripple effects that come from that level of authenticity and the abundance mindset that it's built on. It's so different from what exists out there in terms of social media or even just like career navigation and stuff. It's really different and it's needed. So I was like, this has to keep existing in the world. That's the number one priority. And then I care about my team. I care about my investors. I care about myself, but like OwnTrail must keep existing. And so that's what really informed the path I took from that plan B, which was I need to find somebody that will buy it and keep it going. The good thing that I had going was that we had really taken a very collaborative approach from the beginning in line with our values, which was like, oh, there's other people working in similar spaces. Let's become friends with them. Let's get to know them. Let's partner. Like we had all these really great partnerships going where we had different communities and different companies embedded into OwnTrail. I started reaching out to some of those partners and just saying, hey, what I said, which is totally not the playbook that they tell you to say you're supposed to be like, hey, I'm interested in some kind of strategic partnership, blah, 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 and try to like squeeze in some acquisition talk through the back door or whatever. But I didn't have time for that. And that's just not my style.
Let's stick down to brass tacks here.
So I'm like, oh, we get to blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm almost out of money. I think I would have to shut the company down. Otherwise, if you want to buy it,
Yeah.
So just very real with people that I already had relationships with. I ended up finding a few potential landing spots and picking one of them, which was Teal. Teal is a really amazing company founded by a really amazing guy that I've become friends with, Dave Fano. And we've been partnering with them for a long time at OwnTrail. We've had Dave speak and some speaker sessions. I've spoken on their podcast. We've done workshops with their community. We have them embedded on OwnTrail. We already knew that there was like really strong alignment between us. And because Teal is about helping people really find fulfillment through finding and navigating the careers that are right for them. And OwnTrail, while it's holistic about everything you're navigating in life, there was a really strong career focus to that. So obviously our jobs do play a very important role in our life. Dave had the same goal as me. He was like, yeah, look, I want OwnTrail to keep existing in the world. And it was heartbreaking to have to step away from it. And it felt so right that this is where OwnTrail was landing. It was both of those things at the same time.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, I guess like the biggest emotion I was feeling through all that was just like dread and anxiety, just about, there was a lot of moving pieces. And so it was a very stressful time trying to figure that all out.
In some cases, in acquisitions, the leader is kept in some sort of role. Are you advising at all, or have you completely stepped away?
Yeah, I'm an advisor to Teal now. Yeah. Which is, they didn't need another executive level leader at this stage.
Yeah.
Which is really good. I don't think I didn't feel like I wanted to keep working on this if it wasn't my company.
I get that. I think that would be very hard.
I just felt like I needed some closure at that point. Like, the idea also went through my mind. I'm like, in theory, I guess I could just lay off the whole team, go down to like base operating expenses and just keep it alive on the side myself. And that could have been a possibility. But I think for both me and the team, because our whole team was just so passionate about what we were building too. And I think it would have been hard for all of us to just step away if we still had it there. Like, I think just like for mental health, I went through that. I was actually like in the middle of this whole process where we already had the letter of intent and everything to go with Teal. And I was at a cabin with some friends for the weekend. And I woke up one morning, I'm like, wait, maybe I should just keep this myself. Maybe I'm making a huge mistake. And I like ended up like cabin porch talking with advisors all morning, go through that thought. But it was just like,
I think there's slight identity crisis, right? Like,
exactly. Guessing yourself. But I realized, like, for my own mental health, and I think the team's mental health, that we needed that kind of closure at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't help but see the parallel of exactly why you created OwnTrail, that there's not just one path. There's no right or wrong there. And that could have turned out just fine too. But what is the most optimal choice in the moment and for the long term? It's so hard to know.
Yeah, no, totally. And you can, like, when you're in that place where this decision's not finalized yet, you keep letting yourself go down those different choose your adventure paths and trying them on. And I think that's like the trying them on part is pretty important, because you try something on a little bit and you see how it feels, and then let that feeling guide you as well.
Yeah. You decided to jump right back into something full time with Glowforge. Did you take any time in between?
At one point, like, I had this group of CEO friends that were on an email thing together. And so I sent a note to everybody, and I was like, and most of them were like farther along CEOs than I was. I'd been doing it for longer. And I just was totally, I was like in the depths of everything that was going on. I sent a note to everybody, and I'm like, y'all, I am really struggling right now. I'm almost out of money, and I'm going to have to be acquired. I feel depressed. I feel anxious. This is really hard. Has anyone been there before? Like, just getting real about it. And turns out everyone had been there before. Everyone was sharing stories and meeting me for coffee. And it was really helpful to have just the solidarity of even all these really successful roles and successful companies, successful exits, all the things have been like rock bottom where I was. And one of those friends that gave me some time to talk through things was Dan Shapiro, who's the CEO of Glowforge. So I ended up in parallel with all the other things going through the very extensive interview process with Glowforge, and then getting offered this role. I accepted the job and said I needed a month. I called it the month of Rebekah. The first week after the acquisition closed, I literally slept for a week straight. I don't think I realized how tired I was sleeping 12 hours a day for the first week. It was wild.
If you could go back and speak to your sub 20-year-old self, what advice, wisdom would you share?
So I know this is like a question that people ask. So I tend to say none. And the reason I say that is because, like, the whole butterfly effect thing. If I knew something then, that if I told myself something that actually made me like make fewer mistakes along the way, then I wouldn't be where I am right now. And I'm really happy with where I am right now. Like, every mistake, every low point, every every mess up has led to this. And I wouldn't really want to mess with that.
I'm going to jump into some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
How do you define success?
Feeling fulfilled and fulfillment, I think, and to some extent legacy.
What was your dream job as a very young child?
Ballerina.
What's your path not taken?
I guess non-motherhood is one, right? I'm really glad I'm a mom. I love my kids, but that is definitely like a path that leads to just an entire lifestyle that is different than if I hadn't had kids.
I like that answer. What 3 words would you use to describe your career?
Unplanned, fun, and challenging.
How has stress manifested for you?
I'm going to give like a slightly different spin on that answer is
Fine.
the way that I prevent or work through stress is creative outlets. And so I guess stress manifests in me doing more creative things as a way of combating it.
What is the company on your resume that turns the most heads?
Zillow.
Label 3 of your jobs. Love, ultimate fun, skip.
Okay. Love OwnTrail. Ultimate fun, Glowforge. Skip Microsoft.
Thank you very much for sharing. Rebekah, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to meet you officially and hear your story. Thank you for sharing openly.
Yeah, this was awesome.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Effing Up. I'm your host, Deanne Reiner. If you enjoyed today's episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe on the platform you use to listen to podcasts. Share Effing Up with others, post about it on social media, and or leave a rating and review. Until next time, count your perceived failures as part of your path to success. After all, we're all effing up.